Greetings there, fellow duelists. This is Sage Armageddon coming to you again with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building video. This is going to be a continuation of the Masterclass series in which we discuss all things deck building, strategy, and technical play. In the previous video, the previous two videos specifically, I went over the type of decks that there are and then gave some examples of those type of decks. In this video, I wanted to go ahead and let's see if we can start getting into the structure of deck building. Now, there's no predefined way that you have to approach deck building. You don't have to start with one specific thing first that you put in the deck and then work your way in a specific structure. But I'm going to try to present the information in these master classes with some type of structure. Just to try to keep things a little bit a little clean and easier to follow. But in this particular video, I wanted to go ahead and get into the topic of the win condition. And basically, as everybody probably knows just from hearing the term, the win condition is what will ultimately win you the game or what will lead to you being victorious in the long run. There are quite a lot of different examples of win conditions. You have more gimmicky win conditions. You have win conditions that are more quote-unquote competitive. It ultimately depends on what it is that you're trying to do here. I have a bunch of examples. This is definitely not even close to an exhaustive list, but I'll go ahead into some of the different examples of win conditions, and then hopefully we'll go ahead and show some examples in dueling. So we have here is the first is Exodia, the Forbidden One. Everybody that's played Yu-Gi-Oh for a while knows that if you get 5 pieces of Exodia, the Forbidden One in your hand, the left arm and leg, the right arm and leg, and the head, which is this part here, you pretty much win the duel. This is definitely a win condition. However, I would say that it's a far more gimmicky win condition because Yu-Gi-Oh ultimately is a game about options and resource management, and a deck that is able to efficiently use Exodia as its win condition pretty much just tries to turbo out or as quickly as possible just gun towards getting all 5 pieces in the hand. It pretty much almost completely ignores the opponent and what they bring to the table. So even a single interruption will spell doom for a deck like this, unfortunately, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh. So that means pretty much if you use this type of deck, you have to go first and hope that you don't get hand trapped, and or hope that you don't lose the coin flip, because that's also a loss. You definitely don't want to try to play through a board with the cards that you're going to be using to try to search for Exodia, the Forbidden One, and all 5 pieces, right? But technically, it is a win condition. Now, before we continue, I wanted to go into it a bit further. As you're going to see with the title here, it's win condition / option elimination. The reason why I put that is because win conditions are tied to options. At a very fundamental level, the whole point of Yu-Gi-Oh is to eliminate your opponent's option to play Yu-Gi-Oh. The more options you have and or the less options your opponent has, the more likely you are going to win the game and the more likely they're going to lose. Not guaranteed, but the odds will generally be in your favor when you have more options. Obviously, if you see you win on the screen, your opponent is not allowed to continue that game. They have to scoop up their card, shuffle their deck, and head to the next round or match. So their option to play is eliminated, correct? However, we can take this level of thinking and apply it to many different aspects in Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Eliminating options to play can appear in many different ways, right? Which we're going to get into in more specifics here in a bit. Obviously, if you draw off 5 pieces of Exodia, your opponent is no longer able to play that round after they lost, right? So But I just wanted to give a little brief of that. I'm definitely going to go into what I mean by option elimination as we get further into the discussion here. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to the next example part. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, while itself is not a win condition, anybody that's been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for some time now, either you're new or more seasoned, knows how oppressive this card game can be. With negates and interruption, normally what happens is when you're playing, especially in competitive on Master Duel and like high platinum to diamond and master ranks, when your opponent goes first, what do you normally see? You either see like 5 annoying back row cards, or you see a bunch of stuff on their board that says you don't get to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Maybe you see Borolo Savage Dragon, which is an Omni. It's something called an Omni Negate, which allows you to negate a spell, trap card, or a monster effect once per turn. Usually Baron de Fleur, probably the most popular one. Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, which is a monster negate that can negate usually up to 4 times. And then you have other cards. You have counter traps that can negate stuff. You got hand traps like Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs, which will negate the effect of the card that you played last in the chain, right? So it's a very oppressive card game. Usually the structure is, of course, the player that's going first is trying to stop player 2 from playing, and player 2 is trying to overcome that defense that the opponent has set up and then win the game. So, but Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is such an example because he's a card that he's a quick effect card. You can pop one monster in your hand or on your field and change all face-up monsters your opponent controls the face-down defense. Sure, this is not negating effects, but it's contributing to eliminating your opponent's options to play the game, which is what we were discussing before, right? Your opponent, so let's say they summon 3 monsters while you have this guy on the board, and you just say, nope, I'm going to blow up one of my dinosaur cards in my hand, and then all of your guys are going face down. Well, they can't do anything with those monsters now, unless it's a very specific type of deck like Yubel, which they can contact fuse off of the board or something. But most other decks, they can't link summon, they can't synchro summon, they can't exceed or XYZ summon. So normally, like flipping all of their monsters face down is very, very disruptive. And if used at the right time, it eliminates your opponent's options to play the game. And if they get stuck without any options to play the game, even though the game is still going when they end their turn, technically it's leading up to the same scenario of seeing you lose on, provided that you are able to capitalize on the open. So it's not quite the same because obviously with Exodia, you just win the game. Like there are no other steps after that. But the idea and the thinking are the same because they lead to the same scenario. If your opponent gets all their stuff put face down and they no longer can play, if you have resources, you're most likely going to be able to make a push that can be lethal. So you just, once again, like I said, eliminating options is pretty much the whole key fundamental behind winning in this game. But yeah, that's Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. You can replace this card with any number of annoying disruptive cards. Evostar, Lars, Hope Harbinger, Titanic Galaxy, whatever monster that you want, Photon Galaxy Lord. There are a lot of them that can negate effects, spells, traps, whatever. But they're eliminating options to play. And usually these types of cards, like this monster here, normally there's at least 1 or 2 other monsters or cards next to him to disrupt you further. So, but this is just one example. Next up, we have card destruction. This isn't a blatant win condition, but this is representative of some ideas I'm going to go over in a more advanced Master Duel class, which is being able to take advantage of certain cards to help you win the game. But this card can be a win condition in the right deck. I've seen my friend playing Dark Worlds. He gets hit with Max C, so his whole strategy at that point is to gun towards this card. And usually the opponent has used their ash by that point. So once he gets to this card, they usually drew half of their deck and then he uses it, which leads to another win condition is if your opponent runs out of cards in their deck and they are forced to draw, they automatically lose the game. It doesn't have to be during the draw phase. If they have 15 cards in their deck, 16 cards in their hand, and you use card destruction, it's going to force them to draw 16 cards before anything else happens, so they will automatically lose immediately. So technically, having your opponent deck out is a win condition. That's why I want to use card destruction as a very gimmicky, but in the right deck, effective method of achieving an end, and also using ingenuity to create win conditions out of cards that normally aren't. So this is a bit of a niche type of card because it only really works with decks like Dark Worlds, but it still can be a win condition because it contributes to, once again, option elimination. If your opponent can't draw cards, they lose the game. They no longer have the option. Next up, we actually have a trio here. So Dark Magical Circle, Eternal Soul, and Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. Pretty much what these cards do briefly is this card becomes Dark Magician while it's on the field, and it makes it so your opponent can't target spells or traps you control, card effects, and they also cannot be destroyed by cards. The trap card allows for you to, this is a continuous trap, you can at quick speed either special summon Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, or add one Dark Magic attack or Thousand Knives from your deck to your hand. That second part of the effect is almost completely useless. It's usually the special summon Dark Magician. And Dark Magical Circle, which it does have a semi-search effect, which lets you excavate cards from the top of your deck. But the real effect is, if Dark Magician is normal or special summon to your field, you can target one card your opponent controls and banish it. So pretty much what the strategy is to get these two cards out here so that every time Dark Magician hits the field, your opponent loses a resource. And to get this fusion card here with those two cards out so your opponent can't get rid of them. And then every turn you can either link this off or do something with it. And then use the trap card to summon it, because in the graveyard it's Dark Magician. So you would summon this back from the graveyard if something happens to it, and then the continuous spell card will allow you to banish something in the field, and this card keeps your continuous spell, like continuous trap, from being able to be destroyed. Now the problem with Dark Magician with this is that it requires way too much setup and too many cards to get going. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very fast-paced competitive game. But you're not going to get anywhere close to getting that win condition unless you're just fighting a really, really not so good opponent and or deck, right? But if Dark Magician gets this going, if you don't have a very specific out like a Kaiju or something, you're probably going to lose that. I've experienced this quite a few times. So that's the win condition. Even though it's a trifecta of 3 specific cards, it still eliminates the opponent's option to win the game, because if they don't have a way to out this and keep it out, then you're going to keep summoning this card, which has high attack, and banishing their resources, which, if they keep losing resources, guess what? They're going to lose the option to play the game, because they're going to have fewer cards than you do and less ways to respond to your board or whatever plays you're making. Once again, option elimination. This trifecta is, it's eliminating your opponent's options of stopping you from mauling their resources because of the fusion monster. It's also eliminating your opponent's option to kill you because of this card plus the trap card. This is very high attack monster, and the trap card can keep bringing it back. So they would have to do a very specific play line or have a hard out to stop this once it gets going. Otherwise, they're just going to lose the game, right? So that's what I mean by option elimination. That's just another reason. Skill drain. Everybody hopefully knows what this annoying card does. You just activate this card by paying 1k life points, and then negate all effects. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters while they are face-up on the field. But their effects can still be activated. They're just negated, right? So anybody that's played competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Master Duel for any period of time knows skill drain and how oppressive this card can and be and was when it was at 3. Holy crap. Very annoying in decks like outlets, etc. Still annoying when it pops up, can automatically almost win the game by itself. It speaks for itself. It eliminates your opponent's option to use monster effects, which are very important. Most decks that are competitive kill you with monsters, and the monsters do most of the heavy lifting. Traps and spells are usually either utilities or they lead to monsters. So when monster effects are negated, especially if they have low attack, it eliminates their options to do anything. It turns all of their monsters on the board into vanilla monsters. So the players will lose the ability to answer certain problematic situations. It can turn off entire extra decks because every extra deck monster they summon becomes a vanilla monster with no effect. This card is very annoying. A lot of floodgates are very annoying. There can be only one, also known as Tikaboo. Rivalry of Warlords, Goes in Match, Summon Limit, El Shaddai Window, and Necro Valley, Secret Village of the Spellcasters, Ibli, Destiny Hero, Dark Angel. I think we all get the point. Floodgates are freaking annoying as freak, and they are a very quintessential example of cards that eliminate the option to play. They literally shut off a mechanic of the game, and depending on how reliant your opponent's deck is on those mechanics, sometimes it can just be outright death if you activate the right floodgate at the right time. Some players will just scoop out. Technically, the game's still going. They still have life points. But if they can't summon or play any cards and you can, they're going to lose the game eventually, right? So it's a well-placed floodgate eliminates options to play the game. Like I said, I'm going to keep repeating it because it's just true. These cards strip the mechanics from the game, which eliminates the option to play, right? So those are pretty much all the there's one more example. Two more, actually. We have number 90, Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord. I mentioned him earlier, and this is pretty much the same deal as Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. It's a monster that tries to stop you from playing. Normally, this type of win condition of smothering your opponent with negates is usually alongside at least two other cards that do something similar. You might see this card next to a Hope Harbinger or a Baron de Fleur or something like that, right? Or an Appaloosa with a counter trap behind them, maybe a few hand traps or something like that. It's not as impactful as shutting off a mechanic like a floodgate, but still denying your opponent an important monster effect that they need to resolve. Like if, for example, if you're fighting Fluounderies and they summon Rabina and you just negate it with this card, that you're eliminating an option, and it might be a critical option for them to be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? So negates, so even a single negate is not to be underestimated if somebody knows how to use it and place it in the matchup. But yeah, this card sits next to Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Is the same type of idea. And then we have my last example that I have here, the Arrival Cyburst Addict Mister. This monster is usually used in the Cyburst deck known as Addict Misters. It's pretty much what this is. It's just a card once you summon it. It gains 1,000 attack times the number of link materials that you use to summon this. So if they use 5 materials, he becomes 5,000 attack. He's normally about 6,000 attack when he comes out. But the key thing here is that he says unaffected by other card effects. That means no other card effects affect this guy. Skill drain doesn't work. Raigeki doesn't work. Lightning Storm doesn't work. No change of heart, no mind control. Imperm doesn't work. Imperm is infinite impermanence for those that might not know. No monster effect is going to work on this guy. You can't get rid of him with a monster that says blow up a part your opponent controls. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno can't put this guy face down because he's a link monster, but even if it wasn't a link monster, it's unaffected, so he wouldn't be able to do it. So this card exemplifies all in one card where it says unaffected by other card effects. What it really means, and what you could replace that text with, is your opponent doesn't get to do anything about it. That's pretty much what it's trying to tell you, right? It's eliminating their option to deal with the card. Now, no situation is truly invincible, but the fewer options you give your opponent, the less likely they're going to have an out to it, especially in a card game with as much variance as Yu-Gi-Oh! You might not draw what you need. This card can be outed. You can use Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, which will allow you to link this guy right off the field. That's not an effect, it's a condition to summon. You can tribute this card with a kaiju. If for some odd reason they have more than one monster, you can tribute it for Lava Golem, Winged Dragon, and Raw Sphere mode. Technically, this card is going to be evenly matched, but evenly matched doesn't work because they will never pick this card if you hit them with evenly matched. So they're going to leave this card on the field. But in theory, evenly matched could potentially work in some strange scenario where you're able to hit them with evenly matched and remove it from the field so you have no cards on the field at all, which is virtually impossible unless your opponent uses like a cosmic cyclone or something, but that's neither here nor there. Technically, evenly matched would make the opponent select, which is not an effect of evenly matched. It's making the opponent pick to get rid of something. Situations like that. So technically, Destructive Daruma can to get rid of this card as well because it's a condition that any card that is not put face down has to be removed from the field. That's not the card's effect. So there are definitely ways to out this card, but it's very freaking hard. A lot of those cards are not even commonly used in most decks. The most common card you might see to out a card like this is Underworld Goddess of the Closed. Any deck that can spam a bunch of monsters can make that, and it's an extra deck card, so it's easy to get to using your engine. That's probably the best way to out this card. These, just for those that aren't aware, these are called Towers monsters. They get the names Towers because of Aqua Fort Towers, which was probably the first monster that can be used reasonably competitively that was unaffected by card effects. So yeah, this card is extremely difficult to get rid of. Most decks are going to have to scoop on impact unless they have a specific out. I do know I've run into this card with a deck where I don't have anything that can be done about it, and the only option at that point is to just sit there and stare at my opponent as they kill me by attacking over me with giant monsters, or I scoop up. All right, it's sometimes if you don't have the out, you just can't do nothing about it. You technically can attack over, but 6,000 plus attack is extremely difficult to run over. But I think we get the point. But all that was to showcase a bunch of different ways to eliminate options for your opponent to play. And that pretty much equates to your win condition. Your win condition is typically something that you would focus on, but not always. Sometimes decks have multiple different ways to win, whether it's attacking you directly with gigantic attack points, smothering you with negates, summoning a Towers monster, some gimmick card that says you win. A deck can have any number of win conditions potentially, but those are the ones that I'm aware of now that I think are pretty good examples at the level of discussion that we're having right now. But yeah, I wanted to go ahead and go over win conditions because that's going to be something important to focus around when we get to the deck building part. Understanding your win condition is very important. That way you can learn and or take steps necessary to actually build your deck around win conditions to help bolster them and give them the support that they need to actually win you the game. But yeah, win conditions are very important to summarize, and they pretty much culminate in your opponent being unable to play or win the game. That's the idea. But that's pretty much going to be it for this discussion. Um, there are definitely other examples, but it's I'm not going to try to make an exhaustive list here. I think we all get the point. In one of the next iterations, I'm going to go into some live duels and show some examples of win conditions in live duels, both on my side and my opponent. So especially for the newer players, they can actually see and get a grasp of the flow of the game and what's going on. But I do want to thank everybody for attending this specific discussion. Feel free to like the video if you like it, subscribe if you're willing, and this is going to be Sage Armageddon signing off, and I hope everybody has a great day. Take care.